no secret that I am not the biggest fan of Audis going. In fact, the R8 first generation in both V8 and V10 guises left me very, very cold. However, if you were going to force me to buy any sort of Audi, it'd look a lot like this. This is the RS5, and it's been brought to me today by Robert. And it does a lot right for me. Now, I do have quite fond memories of the A5. When I was 18 and the world was disintegrating and you couldn't sell a car for love nor money, the Audi dealership that my father dealt with decided to sell him as his new company car an A5. At the time, that was a brand new model, and although he only wanted one of the more sensible 2-litre or maybe 2.7s, they were so desperate to sell him a car that they sold him at a very, very good price the 3-litre TDI. And that had 240 horsepower, 370 pound-foot of torque, and it felt like a spaceship inside. And just by pretty much luck, I was actually insured on that car at the tender young age of 18. And my dad did let me drive it. And to 18-year-old me, wow, that was amazing. That was just a brilliant, brilliant car. I loved it. Since then, I haven't really driven many Audis at all. I had a couple of brief flirtations with an R8 that left me quite cold, and I also drove the Audi RS4 you may have seen in my M3 versus RS4 video. I quite like that car, but you know, generally of late I haven't really been into big German saloons at all. But when Robert offered me the chance to drive this, his first generation RS5, I was very keen to give it a go. Now, for those of you who don't know, this has the 4.2 litre naturally aspirated V8 that's fairly familiar to Audi fans. It appeared in the RS4 and then the R8 as well. In this application though, rather than the usual 420 horsepower, it's closer to 450. Now, the car may weigh an awful lot. In fact, in the real world, this is knocking on the door of 1,800 kilos. So with 3 of us actually sat in it today, this is a 2-ton car. But 450 horsepower is not something to be scoffed at. Now, the first thing that impresses is the noise. The second thing that impresses is this interior. Now, I've knocked certain Audi products for basically having the same interior as other Audi products. That was one of my biggest issues with the R8, and actually to some extent the Lambo Gallardo. They have the same interior as a 10-year-old pretty cheap and nasty Audi. This though, this is a very nice place to be. I'm sure this does share its interior with certain other models, but this just feels really, really nice. And although this is now a 7-year-old car, this is a 61 plate 2011 car, it feels brand spanking new. That's probably got a lot to do with the fact that it's got not even 36,000 miles on the clock, and it has been very, very well cared for by its owners. Now, Robert's had this car for quite some time. He's not had any issues at all with it. In fact, the only issue with the car, and the only noise it's making that I don't like, is a small little rattle from over there, which is thanks to his young daughter who decided to feed stones to the air conditioning system. I don't think we can hold that against Audi, really. The car's got a reasonable amount of shove from low down, but let's face it, naturally aspirated engines are not about low down shove, at least not this side of the pond. They're about that top end rush, and I'm going to have to wait a minute to be able to show you what that looks, feels and sounds like, but I've got high hopes. The steering in this car is really quite heavy. Has it got a lot of feel? I shall have to get on more demanding and twistier roads to be able to tell you, but I like weight in steering. I don't like it being unnecessarily heavy, but in cars like this, when the car itself is quite heavy, I do like it because it reminds you of the weight of the machine that you're trying to pilot. Now, I'm currently driving this in individual modes. This has been set up to Robert's own preferences. What they are, I have no idea, but that's what he recommended driving in the car in, and that's what I'm going to do. If you set it to comfort mode, the steering does become a little lighter, actually noticeably lighter to be fair, but I like the heavier steering. That's just a personal preference. It actually rides quite well. My overriding memory of the RS4 that I drove is that it rode very, very stiffly. That engine sounds gorgeous. Now, this car is completely unmodified. One thing that's, at the moment, it's very early days, but one thing that's seeming a little off and perhaps taking me away from the experience a touch is the gearbox. Now, downshifts are great and accompanied by that lovely, lovely blip, but on the upshifts it seems a little slow. But that's because I was cruising, so let's see what it's like when I put my foot down a bit more. Better, definitely better. Oh, it pulls hard at the top end. You can feel the weight in the car though. You can really, really feel it. That front end in particular. Now, I know people will write all day long about Audis and understeer and all that stuff. Well, there's a reason for it. Audi tend to push their engines pretty far forward to give you a bit more room in the cab, certainly compared to BMWs. Now, I think this car is perhaps not as extreme as the A4, there's certainly less room inside here, but there's no denying the fact that the weight distribution in this car is at least 54% forwards. I've actually seen higher figures bandied around, close to about 58%, but the official figures around 54%. Now, to put that into context, the car I'm used to driving, the Lotus, has something like 38% forwards, and that's quite different. Now, my Subaru has similar weight distribution, but the Subaru is some 300 kilos lighter than this car, so there's no escaping the fact that that is a pretty heavy front end. However, helping keep that front end pretty firmly planted are some absolutely enormous tyres. This car has 275s all round, front and rear. 275. That's huge. That's bigger than the rears on a previous gen C63. I don't think grip is going to be an issue in this car. Not in most conditions. Of course, one of the nice things about the Audi and the Quattro system, now in this car, this is a proper Quattro system. This is not the Haldex part-time, student worker system that you get in things like the Golf R. No, this is the daddy. This is a proper, permanent, all-wheel drive system. And you can feel that, and it makes a very, very big difference. Now, by default, this car apparently will shuffle something like 50-60% of the power to the rear. It can send up to 85% of power to the rear, I am told, which is meant to give the car a more rear-wheel drive feel. I think you'd buy this car for the noise alone. Oh yes, I'll have me some of that. And it's just so secure, it's so safe, it's so planted. Oh, it's growing on me very, very quickly, this car. I just like it. It's got some space in the back. It's not great. I mean, I wouldn't really call it a true four-seater. If you want one of those, obviously the RS4 is where you should be looking. But it's practical. The boot is massive. And that's another downside for the R8. It's a very impractical car. It's tiny. I keep comparing this to the R8 because it's a car that I know fairly well. And I think the reason I do that is that if you had, let's say, 40 grand to spend on a used Audi, and you're wondering what to get, unless you really wanted an R8, this has got a lot going for it. A hell of a lot. The traction control did light up there. It's probably got a lot to do with the fact that it's only about 4 degrees outside, and I did put my boot down in first. But the car's pretty planted. And that's the thing. So a couple of days ago I was recording my podcast at a very nice car dealership, and they had in an Audi S8. Now, I love the film Ronin, so to me an Audi S8 is a legendary car. And looking at that, it was a dark grey, or sort of mid-grey, a bit of a shade lighter than this perhaps, but it had a gorgeous interior, sounded nice, it's fast, it was the 4-litre V8 turbo one. And it's the sort of car that I think you'd equally enjoy driving as being driven in. And if I was in the market for a very, very, very nice daily, and I didn't really give two hoots about my fuel economy, I'd be giving that serious consideration. However, if you didn't have the luxury of having your own driver, and you wanted something to drive yourself all the time, with perhaps your friend and maybe occasionally the kids, and you need enough room in the back for your clubs, so when you go down to the country club with your business partner or so on, you can take the two of you down with clubs and luggage and room to spare. This is a really, really good car. It feels like a German car should. It feels properly solid. I don't feel like anything's really gonna fall apart or come apart or just, you know, come off in your hand, and it feels like the car would pretty much go on forever. However, as you know, I don't tend to give any car a free pass, and this is not a perfect car. What's not perfect about it? Okay, point one, it's huge, it's big, and it feels it from inside. To some people, that could make it intimidating to drive. Doesn't bother me too much because I've had cars this sort of size. You know, I'd compare this with something like a BMW 6 Series. I had a 6 Series, and parking it in places like London, that was problematic. Point two, that gorgeous, beautiful sounding V8, yeah, that doesn't come cheap. It likes a drink. I mean, it really, really likes a drink. Think teens if you're having fun. Think very low teens if you're having fun. And if you're driving it like a saint, you're probably not going to get much better. I'd wager this car probably rarely, if ever, seen 30 to the gallon. And that is basically the main reason that this car has only 35,000 miles on it, because it costs an awful lot to keep that going. Point three, although the car's never broken, it has cost its owner a reasonable amount of money in just regular maintenance. Now, service costs are not too bad, but certain things can happen with this car that are not unique to the RS5, but you want to be aware of. So these cars suffer from pad transfer. So you need to either replace the discs, which is what the Audi garages probably tell you to do, or get the discs skimmed at certain intervals, which is what this owner has had done with this. Now, it's not a hideously expensive process, but it's rather disappointing to have to do that every now and again, and that's pretty much a result of the fact that it's a heavy car. There's just no escaping that. That also means that it's very heavy and hard on its other components, the wheels and suspension and so on. I know my friend with the RS4 had to replace his suspension components, or certainly parts of them, because, well, the RS4 just likes to break them. And those thumping great big 275 section tyres, I've not looked up how much they cost to replace, because frankly, whether I own this or not, I don't want to know how much they cost to replace. So this is going to be a reasonably cheap car to buy for what it is, I would say, but you just need to bear in mind, and with it being a Quattro as well, the official advice is that you should replace all 4 tyres at the same time. Yeah, at low speeds, that gearbox is just a bit too slow for my liking, just a bit too slow. It's the upshifts it suffers, which is very disappointing when you consider that it is a double clutch unit. That being said, as bad as the upshifts are, the downshifts, lovely. In fact, if you can't tell, I'm impressed with this car. Now, as it happens, Robert, the gentleman who owns this is not his daily, because in his own words, it would just be ruinously expensive to run as a daily. And he said that's a great shame, because everything else about it makes it perfectly daily drivable. Audi RS5, should you buy one? Are you looking for a great sounding, reasonably quick and pretty comfortable coupe? And can you afford to keep feeding it? If you can, get one. I'm a big BMW fan, as you guys know. But if you gave me the choice of this or an M4, I'm sorry, Beamer, but I'll have to turn to the dark side. It's this I'd have every day of the week. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please like, subscribe, comment, do all those things that you do, and I shall see you next time. Bye-bye.